the Wisconsin GOP really has not given up on their mission of using undemocratic practices to dominate the state government of how the most 50-50 Democrat Republican states in the country. Yeah, it's scary because in fact, what they've done right now is accelerated their descent to authoritarianism with their threats to impeach and remove the recently elected Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice, Janet Protasiewicz. And she's a Democrat. So here's what they're claiming. The Republican-controlled Wisconsin legislature argued in filings last week that Protasiewicz, I cannot say it, that's fine though, has prejudged the cases, which could result in new, more Democratic-friendly maps being drawn before the 2024 election. Republican legislative leaders have threatened to impeach her if she hears the case, a move that they have enough votes to do. Now, Republicans argued in their recusal motion that the justice's campaign statements revealed that her thumb is very much on the scale in this case. During her winning campaign, she called the Republican-drawn maps unfair and rigged and said there needs to be a fresh look at the gerrymandering question. Protasiewicz never said how she would rule on a redistricting lawsuit. The thing is that's clear is that judges often, well, they're not supposed to opine on cases that are before them outside of writing their opinion, but she did not have the case before her at the time. She is newly elected. So the comments she made previously shouldn't necessarily be something that are held against her. Because it's interesting because as we've seen with the US Supreme Court justices, when they were before Congress in their Senate hearings, they said all sorts of things, including, no, I wouldn't upend Roe v. Wade. And then what happened when the issue came before them? They decided a different way. Judges can do that. So why now you have the Republicans in Wisconsin trying to ensure that this judge cannot hear this case and isn't continuing allowed to do her job? It really just speaks to the duplicity there. Jordan.
Yeah, this is, we see this across the board with Republicans. When they lose, they really revert to cheap, dirty, anti-democratic tactics. Obviously in 2020, they stormed the Capitol. In Georgia, they tried to, find votes. But in Wisconsin, this isn't the only instance. They're upset about losing the Supreme Court election here. But in 2019, when Tony Evers won, they limited his power. Republicans in the state legislature, knowing that they were gonna have a Democratic governor, rewrote the rules to limit what a governor could do in that state because they lost. Like, this is who the Republican Party is. To compare it to sports, is if you get beat on a play, you just turn around and kick somebody in between the legs. It's filthy, it's dirty, it's unsportsmanlike. But in politics, it's the equivalent of what they're doing. But the consequences are much more severe here. It impacts all of us. Here, this could potentially protect abortion rights in Wisconsin by having an additional Democratic justice on the Supreme Court. But they don't want that. They want to continue this anti-democratic reign of terror. They want to try to continue controlling what people do with their bodies. And if that means trying to kick this woman off of the Supreme Court, so be it. They don't care. They don't care if they have to ignore the fact, like you said, she was commenting on an issue before she was even a judge, before she even had the case in front of her. She was just commenting as a person. They don't care because the end goal for them is complete and total control over the system, over people, over the economy, over society, so they can continue enacting their will. We're all screwed as a result. So this is where we have to remain vigilant. You can't let cynicism win. You can't give up, you can't lose hope, because this is how they're playing. They're playing filthy, they're playing dirty, they're not playing by the rules. So you have to fight with even more strength.
No, absolutely. You are spot on, correct. And it's a never-ending battle, it seems, because they're not even getting to the fact of, is what she said to be actually accurate? Is the gerrymandering issue a problem in terms of ensuring that people's votes are heard? And the thing is we know from the GOP's many campaigns to gerrymander and redline and whatnot, that the efforts put into play to silence marginalized groups who mainly vote Dem, that's something that they are committed to doing. And fortunately, the attorneys are also committed to fighting against this through legal filings. So in two separate redistricting cases, lawyers have filed objections or motions objecting to the request that Justice Protasiewicz actually have to recuse herself. One motion objecting to Protasiewicz's recusal argued that such a move would be unsupported by fact or law, and it would be contrary to her duties as a justice on the Supreme Court. Unhappy with the electoral results, which they could not prevent through gerrymandering, Republicans now seek to nullify the results and pick their justices. It would take only a simple majority vote in the Assembly to impeach Protasiewicz and a 2/3 majority vote in the Senate to remove her from office. Republicans have a 65 to 34 majority, sounds super to me, in the Assembly and 22 to 11 majority in the Senate. Yeah, so it could very much happen that this recently elected Democratic-leaning justice on their Supreme Court could end up being removed simply because the Republicans know it could mean that they're not reelected in legislature. But the thing is maybe they shouldn't be. And in fact, I'd argue they shouldn't be if the people don't want it. And so we can look here at the gerrymandering issue and how incredibly important it is. Check out this here, this chart. Look at the split of then presidential candidates in the last 2 elections. We have Trump and Clinton. You see how close that is? Less than 0.8% for Wisconsin. And then you look at what Biden and Trump in the last election, and you have something similar here. Separated by what, 1.4%? The votes are so closely aligned, not even 1.4%, less than 1% basically in the last 2 elections. That speaks volumes about how tight things are. And now they're in a position where Wisconsin legislature could simply overthrow the will of the people by ensuring that marginalized voters are suppressed and that their say is watered down by allowing a gerrymandering map to stay in play. Jordan.
Yeah, this is something that just drives me insane. You would think that people would be off put by this, no matter which political party they affiliate themselves with. This is a party, a controlling party, redrawing maps to preserve their power ideally in perpetuity for them. We're all screwed as a result. You would think there'd be more opposition, but there isn't, because unfortunately, I think this plays in both parties. If it's their people doing it and they remain in power and that they have a leg up in future elections, they don't care. They'll turn a blind eye to it. They'll justify it however they want. Nobody benefits from a system where we have hyper-partisan gerrymandering. It's totally absurd, but here we are.
No, you're exactly right. Here we are. And it seems like we're always here with the right trying to water down the voices and the votes of marginalized people, because we know that's what they do to stay in power. They win by illegitimate means. Because if a state Supreme Court justice, if they're gonna be elected, that means the will of the people needs to be deferred to. But instead trying to impeach them for making political statements, not actually prejudging cases, but again, making these political statements, it's wild. This is crazy to me. But then again, this is how the GOP likes to run it.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.